The greatest commanders in history, Alexander, Caesar, Napoleon, all tasted defeat. Yet, one man fought over 100 battles and never knew the sting of defeat. Today, we unveil the story of the commander who crushed both the Persian and Roman empires, the story of the sword of Allah that was never sheathed. Before becoming a legendary hero, Khalid was the terror that preceded the storm. At the Battle of Uhud, as victory seemed within the Muslims' grasp, Khalid spotted a tiny gap behind the mountain. Without hesitation, he led the Quraysh cavalry in a terrifying flanking maneuver, turning the tide into a catastrophe. He proved that day that he was not merely a warrior, but a predator who read the battlefield like the palm of his hand. Khalid won that day, but deep inside, he sensed something beyond his grasp, the unshakable faith that defied defeat. This day was not just a victory. It was the spark of doubt that drove this genius commander to pursue the truth behind the desert's mirage, waiting for the moment he would face his destiny, far from the echoes of his past. After years of conflict, the message that changed everything arrived. His brother, al-Walid, sent him a call. "Oh, brother, a man like you cannot be ignorant of Islam." Those words pierced the armor of the warrior's pride. He realized his genius was not meant to serve idols, but a higher cause. In a scene that shook history, Khalid ibn al-Walid entered the city, not to wage war, but to offer his sword to the truth. The nightmare of the Muslims transformed into their greatest weapon. Imagine the shock of the Quraysh army, losing their military mastermind. This moment was the earthquake that awakened sleeping empires, for Khalid ibn al-Walid realized his power was only meaningful when guided by righteousness. He became the shield protecting the emerging state against the empires of tyranny in the ancient world, in a transformation that shifted the balance of global power. Khalid ibn al-Walid began a series of campaigns that are studied today in the world's elite military academies. He moved between fronts with blinding speed across a desert his enemies called a graveyard. He mastered maneuver warfare, striking and vanishing before his foes could even react. He didn't just fight to kill, he fought to shatter their will before the battle even began. He displayed a flexibility that made his enemies believe he possessed armies from every corner of the world. He turned the feared desert into a strategic ally. He read the landscape like a chessboard, luring his opponents into inescapable traps. This military genius did not just lead an army. Khalid ibn al-Walid commanded a storm that left nothing behind but victory, turning the lethal sands into a fatal weapon against all who dared oppose him. We reach Yarmouk, the day that decided the world's fate. The Byzantines amassed 200,000 warriors, relying on their heavy cavalry as a devastating strike force. Khalid ibn al-Walid, leading a much smaller army, did not flinch. He brilliantly turned the dust and wind into his allies, maneuvering to ensure the battle raged against the wind, blinding the Romans. Then, he executed his masterstroke, severing the Roman cavalry from their infantry. He lured their horsemen into a phantom chase, leaving the Roman foot soldiers exposed. For 6 days, he constantly shifted tactics, deceiving the Romans and forcing them to retreat on their own chosen terrain. In the final decisive moment, Khalid ibn al-Walid cornered them in a narrow valley, turning their massive army into absolute chaos, forever ending the Roman Empire's dominance over the Levant. Khalid ibn al-Walid died in his bed, far from the clamor of the swords he knew all his life. The final scene was the most heartbreaking, a commander who never knew defeat on the battlefield, his body covered in 1,000 scars, telling tales of victory, weeping bitterly because he did not die a martyr in the heat of battle. He considered himself lacking, even though he shook empires the world thought were eternal. The sword of Allah departed, but his legacy has been etched into the memory of time for over 1,400 years. He did not fight for personal glory or a fleeting throne. Khalid ibn al-Walid fought for an ideal he believed in until his last breath. He passed away convinced he had not given it its due, leaving behind a question that still echoes through the corridors of history. Was this man the greatest commander humanity has ever known? We may never find the answer, but we certainly know that history paused long before the name Khalid ibn al-Walid.